On the evening of November 14, 2010, 18-year-old Anastasia Markovskaya was walking from the 19th school bus stop towards the Novy Novoirkutsky settlement located in the suburbs of Irkutsk. Suddenly, the girl heard someone's footsteps behind her, and then blows to her head started raining down. She fell down, pretending to be dead, and that saved her life. Anastasia became the first victim of the ruthless and bloody maniacs who kept the whole city in fear. You're watching Strashnota, and today I will tell you about a duo of maniacs who stand out because of their age. The story that shocked the entire Russian Far East began back in the distant 90s. By the way, in terms of time, the 90s are now further away than the year 2050. Artem Anufriev was the fourth-born child, on October 4, 1992 in Irkutsk. He grew up without a father. His mother, Nina Ivanovna Anufrieva, worked as an accountant at an insurance company. The woman loved her only child very much. She considered her son to be perfect, and if anyone criticized him, she would immediately rush to his defense. Everyone who was dissatisfied with him became her personal enemy. When she saw bad grades in Artyom's diary, she would immediately write a complaint accusing the teachers of putting psychological pressure on her son. When Artyom was in the 9th grade, the school administration started looking for a new physics teacher because the previous teacher left, saying she would not work with a class where Anufriev was studying. The boy grew up as an arrogant egoist, used to thinking of himself as better, smarter, and more talented than others, and his mother supported this in every way. It's no surprise that such an inflated ego made it difficult for him to communicate with his peers.
She was only interested in her child's grades. For her, keeping up appearances mattered most. That's why he was always neatly dressed and well-groomed. She even, probably ironed his shoelaces for him, especially in 5th grade.
At the beginning of school, the boy was an outcast, but he still did well academically. He found English and literature lessons easy. Anufriev took part in academic competitions. He studied at a music school for more than 5 years, playing guitar and double bass. Then Marina Anufrieva started spending more and more time at work, and the boy was left on his own more and more often. Since early childhood, doctors observed that Artyom had a delay in psychological development. They advised giving the child more freedom and not restricting his personal space, but she did not follow their advice. "I know perfectly well what my son needs," she answered proudly. But as her son grew older, he resisted his mother's total control in every possible way. He became secretive and withdrawn. He began to avoid his mother's company, and deep down he despised her and hated the psychological prison she had created for him. His only friend was Nikita Lytkin. Nikita met Artyom Anufriev at a mutual friend's birthday party, where he confided all his problems to him and received the support he so desperately needed. At that time, Artyom was in the 4th grade. Nikita was a year younger, but they became friends. Nina Anufrieva was against this friendship. The woman not only forbade the boys from seeing each other, but also treated Nikita's mother with disdain. Nikita Lytkin was born on March 24, 1993, and also grew up without a father. Marina Lytkina, his mother, worked as a saleswoman in a shoe store and hardly spent any time with her son. 3 times his father Vakhtang tried to return to the family, but his wife and son didn't care about him, and the father left for good. Artem Anufriev said to his mother, "You don't understand anything about our friendship. Stay out of it. He's my real and only friend." Nikita did well in elementary school, took part in competitions, was calm and obedient, and in 2004 he was transferred to a math class, but he couldn't fit into the new group. Problems with his studies began, and then with his behavior as well. The guy became withdrawn, stopped greeting his classmates, and secretly envied the kids from wealthier families. In response, they started picking on Nikita, but he didn't fight back, he just shouted in return, "Drop dead!" Because of this, they nicknamed him Jimbo, after the grim and tough teenager from The Simpsons. Nikita was often caught drawing on the walls of their apartment building, and he also got caught for petty theft. They'll scold him and let him go, pitying the fatherless kid. In short, Nikita was left to grow up on his own. No one cared about him except for his only friend. Artem and Nikita understood each other instantly. The same problems, the same interests, and the same strong desire to be noticed and popular. Artem managed to shake off the outcast label closer to his final year, but he also lost his good grades, finishing 11th grade as an average student. Nikita started skipping school in 8th grade and only made it through 9th grade. He enrolled in college twice, but was expelled from the first one for poor performance, and in the second one he had a conflict with his classmates. They began both bullying and extorting money from him. His mother filed a report with the police, but later withdrew it, and Nikita stopped attending classes, fearing retaliation. Artyom was doing better. After finishing school, the boy enrolled at Irkutsk State Medical University while working as an assistant at the art museum. Since 2008, the young friends started spending time on the internet, trolling people and writing all sorts of nasty things. They wrote to everyone indiscriminately. One day, Artyom made fun of an Armenian teenager's nationality. He deliberately provoked a conflict, mocking the Armenian family online. The Armenian told him to answer for his words and challenged him to a fight. During the confrontation, the 5 Armenian guys who showed up beat Anufriev badly. His mother, of course, wouldn't tolerate this and took the offenders to court. But in the end, no one was punished, even though a criminal case was opened. The Anufriev family was paid 50,000 as compensation for emotional distress. The case involving the Anufriev family was closed after the parties were deemed reconciled. Later on the internet, Artyom told everyone how he heroically stood up against 5 people. But no one appreciated it. Moreover, he was accused of boasting and being quarrelsome, frustrated that he couldn't become famous. He began to hate Armenians with all his heart, and over time his anger didn't fade but spread to all people. Nikita understood and supported him. He also faced nothing but misfortune in his life. Neither of them was accepted in society. The friends decided to stop trying to make friends and seek recognition some other way. Now they dreamed of becoming famous, to gain glory and prove themselves to everyone. The easiest way to become famous, as they thought, was to form a music band. That's how the evil gnomes appeared. On the internet, the guys posted their music, but there were few listeners, and their creations were mocked more often than praised. No applause, only biting mockery. Angry at the whole world, they abandoned their failed project. After some time, Artyom found a skinhead community in Irkutsk and was fascinated by their aesthetic. The guy often attended the meetings and even brought Nikita to one of the gatherings, but it didn't last long. When they found out that Nikita's patronymic was Vakhtangovich, Artyom was asked, for obvious reasons, not to bring his friend anymore, and soon the guys became disillusioned. The young followers thought they would gather at meetings to take revenge on national minorities, go to rallies, and wave Nazi symbols. But instead, they saw ordinary drinking parties and endless rambling about nationalism. Artyom also wasn't shy about expressing his thoughts and once said that first and foremost, attacks should be directed at the elderly and young women. It seemed obvious to him, since they wouldn't be able to fight back, but it turned out that you can't talk about such things out loud. So the teenager almost got beaten up and became completely disillusioned, deciding that their ideology was too soft and passive. The skinhead leader, nicknamed Boomer, said that Artyom wasn't really a skinhead because their views were completely different. He also didn't like Anufriev's idea that it's better to attack those who can't fight back. Such a cowardly ideology was at odds with the principles of the community. The guys were kicked out and told to get some treatment before trying to join any communities again. After getting into skinheads, they became friends with local nationalists. Friedrich Heuber-Schultz from Zheleznogorsk became quite close friends with the guys. He understood them and recommended reading the book Born to Hate. They really liked this book. In it, they read about a psychological state that was very similar to their own, and the young people began to solve their own problems the way it was described in the book. Another motive was the desire to be like the serial killers they saw on TV and read a lot about on the internet. In 2007, there were TV shows about the Bitsevsky maniac Alexander Pichushkin, who committed dozens of crimes in Moscow, and there are videos about him on the Strashnota channel. By the way, if you're watching Strashnota somewhere other than YouTube or Telegram, then you're watching pathetic fakes, pirated copies, and re-uploads. And Strashnota is currently only available on YouTube and Telegram. Welcome. Fascinated by this, Anufriev created an online group called Pichushkin, Our President, where they even published their candidate selection campaign. On February 13, a day before the anniversary of the execution of the maniac Chikatilo, he posted his portrait online, signing it, "Andrei, we mourn tonight." The young hammer killers were also interested in the Irkutsk gang Blood Magic, who were sentenced on March 1, 2010. And videos about them can be found on the Strashnota channel, and the Dnipropetrovsk maniacs Viktor Senko and Igor Suprunyuk.
I'm not a maniac. See, I'm not a maniac. Well, it didn't really matter to me, but somehow it always turned out that my accomplice was the one who killed the victims.
Nikita Lytkin created an online group called the Irkutsk Anti-Homeless Gang Blood Magic. And in their new music band, Dismembered Pugacheva, they dedicated one of their albums to the Shumkov gang. In their songs, they openly declared their intention to continue Shumkov's work. Nikita Lytkin wrote on the internet, "The band Dismembered Pugacheva will continue the work of Blood Magic not only musically, but in the real sense as well. There is no place for poses in our band. Only those who shape the fate of the rabble are allowed, or those who are about to take serious action. If you're determined, this is the place for you." Artyom and Nikita not only admired the maniacs of their time, but also took note of the methods of committing crimes. The fact that you can record the whole process on video, it's basically like the Dnipropetrovsk maniacs and Blood Magic, it's a kind of dictatorship. They didn't learn from their mistakes in order to remain uncaught. They dreamed of becoming better than Chikatilo, Pichushkin, and all their other idols. But the young men still remained unknown and unwanted, which made them even angrier. Anufriev's neighbors began to hear screams and strange noises coming from their apartment, as if the guy was punching the wall with his fists. Artyom shouted, "I hate everyone, and I'll take you all out." The neighbors were sure that the son was beating his mother. They heard, "Leave me alone. I'm going to hit you again." Artyom didn't even hide the fact that his relationship with his mother was so terrible that he was afraid he wouldn't be able to hold back and would kill the woman. At the same time, Nikita also started having problems with his mother. Arguments and scandals led to minor mental issues, and he began to suffer from insomnia. Marina Lytkina recalls, "I always told him that there is a lot of kindness in the world and that there are more good people than bad and that you need to learn to forgive. I tried to protect him from trouble as long as I could, and by doing so, I ruined his life. I stopped being an authority figure to him because I was just a weak woman who hadn't achieved anything in life, who only worked from morning till night just to somehow survive." Late in the evening, sitting on the heating pipe near Nikita Lytkin's house, they watched a scene where a drunkard was brutally beating his partner. From the drunken shouts, it was clear that she hadn't managed to get another bottle and was receiving her deserved punishment for it. At that moment, they both felt a kind of euphoria from the scene of violence. They glanced at each other and silently nodded. After years of friendship, they learned to understand each other's thoughts without words. "When are we going hunting?" asked Nikita. He had always played the second role in their duo. "See you tomorrow," replied Artyom, clenching his fist. The criminal life of the young dreamers did not begin as smoothly as they had imagined. The guys went out on the job uncertainly and chose a young man as their victim, who not only took their bat and hammer, but also knocked them down so hard that the guys ran away without looking back. Now they planned the crime even more carefully and decided to attack someone who wouldn't be able to fight back. Since the beginning of November, the young men walked the same route every day from the State University bus stop to Akademgorodok from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. They were looking for the very victim they needed, watching passers-by and trying to figure out if it was the right one or not. They also decided to commit their crimes in the evening so that their mothers wouldn't know their sons were not at home. Their mothers often worked at night. The boys went out in dark clothes, black hats and gloves. The first victim was very lucky. Anastasia Markovskaya not only survived, but also remembered the features of the attackers. The next day she filed a report with the police, but the officers did not open a criminal case, citing the fact that nothing was stolen, even though Markovskaya was ready to describe the features of the attackers. The next day, Anastasia shared everything that had happened on the Akademgorodok online forum. Nikita wrote her words of support, just for fun, not out of pity. He posted it on the forum because he was afraid to message her privately. He asked Anastasia to describe everything she felt at the moment of the attack. But after some time, the girl stopped responding and never appeared again. However, the young criminals really wanted to attack someone again. 10 days later, they attacked another woman, but this time she was older. The woman was 46 years old and was walking home from work. This time, something stopped the sadists again, and they didn't harm her. They just stole her bag. A criminal case was opened, but no one bothered to connect it with the first one. On December 1, 2010, they attacked a woman again. They managed to grab her bag, but the woman screamed loudly, and the two cowardly youths ran away before they could do any harm. In the bag, they found 500 rubles and later used the money to buy mallets. Nikita and Artyom were afraid to walk around with a hammer since it could arouse suspicion, but mallets weren't very noticeable, as if they had them for work. And the rubber tip becomes very hard in the cold, almost like steel, and the sound of the strike is very quiet. The young criminals couldn't wait any longer, and just a few hours later, they committed another attack. Before that, Artyom turned on the voice recorder on his phone, just for laughs. Just for lols, for the fun of it. The victim of the hammer attackers was 12-year-old Danila Semyonov, who went to the same school as them. The boy was on his way to ride down a hill on a sled and was easy prey for the hammer attackers. Nikita Lytkin attacked first, stunning Danila with a blow to the head with a mallet, and Artyom Anufriev continued to beat the fallen boy with a baseball bat. A hematoma was found on Danila's hand. Apparently either he tried to shield himself from the bat with his hand, or one of the sadists grabbed his hand sharply. The finale was a pocket knife, which Lytkin drove into the boy's temple up to the handle. Little Danil was still alive when his younger brother found him and called their parents. At first, the criminals wanted to escape, but later changed their minds, deciding to see what would happen next. They stood nearby, watching the family. Danil's mother Svetlana saw them but didn't pay any attention or attach any importance to it. The ambulance was delayed because of traffic jams, and the boy died before the doctors arrived. The recorder in Artyom's pocket kept running, and the hammer attackers listened to that recording more than once. A criminal case was never opened. They considered what happened to be an accident, attributing everything to the fact that the boy was sledding down a hill and crashed into a birch tree at very high speed, although there was nothing at all nearby in the snow that the boy could have hit his head on if the sled was intact. And the slope of the hill the boy was sledding down was only 10 degrees, and a stab wound to the head definitely doesn't look like an accidental injury.
Look, the mother takes care of him, right? She feeds him, looks after him, buys all these clothes. That's just the outer shell, the pastry itself. But what's missing is the filling, attention.
Later, during the investigation, Artyom and Nikita admitted that they were just practicing on the child. 2 weeks later, in the exact same place where Danil Semyonov lost his life, Anufriev and Lytkin attacked Olga Mikhailovna Pirog, who was an employee at a research institute and was walking home from work. She was 69 years old. The Hammer killers started making an audio recording from the moment they began preparing for the attack. They took the woman's hat off and hit her on the head to make sure she was stunned, and later, 30 stab wounds were counted on her body, even though her money and valuables were left untouched. This particular victim of the young criminals was mistakenly believed to be the first. After this incident, the residents of Akademgorodok organized a rally and decided to form special patrol squads to patrol the streets. Anufriev and Lytkin, of course, actively participated in the rallies with the frightened residents, but no one suspected them.
Listen, you and your friend Nikita Lytkin, as far as I remember, even went out as patrol members searching, remember?
I went out as a patrol member? No, that never happened. Where did you even get that from?
That's what I was told.
Who told you that? The investigator. Listen.
Probably the investigator.
The investigator can tell you many things.
Also, Nikita and Artyom kept track of all the news in Red City forums, not hesitating to write to their victims and ask about their health. On December 29, 2010, Artyom and Nikita committed 2 attacks. The first victim was Inessa Svetlova, who miraculously managed to survive. She did not receive any serious injuries and only lost her handbag, which Anufriev and Lytkin threw away almost immediately. At 7 p.m., just an hour after Inessa, they attacked 22-year-old Yekaterina Karpova, who was 35 weeks pregnant, and her younger sister, who was only 5 years old. The young woman worked as a sports coach at the school where Artyom and Nikita studied, and she was on her way home to a private residential area of Akademgorodok. Near the railroad, the girls ran into Anufriev and Lytkin, but Yekaterina didn't pay any attention to them because she was talking on the phone. The brave criminals attacked from behind. Little Olya managed to run away, even though Nikita Lytkin stabbed her in the side and shoulder. Later, the girl was found to have a large hematoma near her shoulder and liver. Yekaterina's head was smashed and her fingers were broken, even though she was screaming that she was pregnant. A car that suddenly came around the corner scared off the criminals, which is why she survived. As she entered the emergency room of the aid station, Yekaterina saw a woman with similar injuries coming out of the doctor's office with her head bandaged. It was Inessa Svetlova. Later, the criminals said that killing a pregnant woman was double the pleasure for them, because in fact, it meant 2 victims at once. They were chasing numbers to surpass the most brutal maniacs and become even more famous themselves. On January 1, 2011, around 5 a.m., Anufriev and Lytkin attacked a homeless man near garbage containers on Lermontovo Street. The Hammer killers stabbed him about 40 times and smashed his head with frozen mallets. The homeless man did not survive. He died in the hospital, and no one ever identified his body. In the case files, he is listed as corpse number 20. A 19-year-old homeless man, Vladimir Basilevsky, was detained on suspicion of murder after blood stains were found on his clothes. The suspect himself said that he spent the night of January 1st in a sewer manhole, but the detective who questioned him decided to get a confession in his own way. Threats and beatings forced the innocent man to confess to the crime. Vladimir Basilevsky wrote a confession to the killing, but it was dictated by the investigator. The accused was sentenced to 4 years. The blood type from the clothes was checked, and testimony was recorded on camera after being told in advance where the bin stood and where the body lay, so that there would be no questions left in the case. Subsequently, investigator Korchevsky, while handling the case of the Hammer killers, checked Basilevsky's testimony and discovered that investigator Yuri Fedorov had ordered a genetic examination. But he sent the case to court without waiting for the test results. In fact, the examination showed that the DNA from the blood on the defendant's clothes did not match the DNA of the deceased. In May 2012, Basilevsky was released from the penal colony after serving a 1.5 years and all charges were dropped. Yuri Fedorov was accused of falsifying evidence and suspended from service at the end of July of the same year, while the operative who used physical force and pressured the suspect was never found. For the unlawful sentence, Basilevsky's lawyer demanded 3 million rubles, but in the end, the Irkutsk court ordered the state to pay compensation in the amount of 300,000. At the end of January, the hammer attackers assaulted their peer Oleg Semenov, a student who was returning late at night from the Stratosphere Club. He managed to escape and survived, and later doctors diagnosed him with lacerations and contusions to the head, a concussion, and a traumatic brain injury. A few days later, on February 3, 2011, they attacked an elderly woman, but once again they were unable to finish what they started. Passers-by scared them off. The woman was taken to the hospital with an open traumatic brain injury. A week later, Nikita and Artyom attacked another woman who survived because a passing car scared the criminals away. The failures made the novice maniacs very angry. They wanted to finish at least one job to release the pent-up rage and adrenaline, and also to record it on video, maybe even send it to their new pen pal on the internet. They managed to finish the job on February 21, 2011, taking the life of Alexander Maximov. The man was returning from visiting his sister, very drunk, when Artyom and Nikita attacked. Alexander's head and jaw were completely smashed. Nikita shot him in the back of the head with a Baikal airgun they had recently bought. And Artyom tried to remove the victim's eyeballs from the skull, but couldn't because he didn't know anatomy. At the crime reenactment, Artyom later claimed that it was Nikita, not him, who tried to gouge out the eyes. Alexander Maximov was buried in a closed coffin and without a head, since the remains of his skull were kept as evidence. A week later, the hammer killers had a serious falling out. In a fit of anger, Artyom blurted out, "What could you do without me, loser?" Nikita took offense and decided to prove to himself and his friend that he was capable of committing a crime on his own. And he attacked a woman sitting on a bench near the entrance. Her name was Nina Kuzmina. She was absorbed in her own phone, frantically typing something with her numb fingers. Nikita hit Nina on the head with a mallet, but the woman didn't lose consciousness. She just screamed hysterically. Lytkin struck again. Alexander Chervyakov ran out of the building at the sound of the scream. Nikita couldn't handle an adult, healthy man. He had to run to the garages, but at the last second he managed to snatch the victim's phone. A few days later, the friends made up and attacked the homeless man Roman Faizulin at night. He was walking past them, not far from Anufriev's house. Artem shot the victim in the face twice with an airgun, after which he and Nikita dragged the man's body into the bushes and started stabbing him in the head, groin, and chest. Lytkin tried to cut off the hand, but the knife was too small and he only managed to cut off the little finger. When he got home, Artem couldn't make himself step away from the window, where he stared at the thin red line on the snow and even took a picture of the view with his phone. After Faizulin's body was found, another rally was held in Akademgorodok. People demanded action. By that time there was information that there were 2 criminals and their age was about 16 to 18. There were also descriptions provided by their first victim, Anastasia, as well as Nina Kuzmina and Alexander Chervyakov. The criminals reveled in their impunity, but decided to hold off on committing new crimes. Activists in Akademgorodok patrolled the streets. Residents tried not to walk alone, but the hammer killers were also learning and tried to attend meetings. Also, in each new crime, they took something from the victim as a keepsake. For example, teeth, wallets, or they took photos and videos as a memento. The residents of Akademgorodok were angry at the police and demanded a full investigation from the authorities. Anufriev and Lytkin understood that they were being hunted, but they could no longer control their sick aggression. Soon they attacked a homeless woman who survived because a police officer, seeing what was happening from the window of his apartment, scared off the criminal. The next victim was also a woman, but this time it happened in an alleyway, and instead of a knife, they used screwdrivers. The attackers ran away, leaving the victim alive, afraid of attracting attention. They only stole her bag. The Ekademgorodok maniacs committed their last crime on April 3, 2011. The victim was a homeless woman, Levtina Kuidina. Anufriev and Lytkin first killed her, and then filmed the desecration of the unfortunate woman's body. In fact, they borrowed the camera specifically for this from Nikita's uncle. The recording shows Nikita cutting off the woman's earlobe with a knife, then unsuccessfully trying to saw off her wrists and cut out her eyeballs. Angry, he forcefully stabbed Levtina in the eye with a knife and then struck her face several more times. That evening, Artyom copied the video from the flash drive and sent it to his like-minded friend Ilya Ustinov from St. Petersburg. He wanted to show off the terrifying video, hoping to receive admiration and recognition in return, but the friend didn't find the footage very impressive, although he still shared it online. Later, the hammer killers left the earlobe on the steps of school number 19 where they once studied. A few days before the arrest, Marina Lytkina found that her son had a knife. Nikita explained that he carried it for self-defense. Photo sketches of the wanted criminals began to be posted around the city. When they saw them, Lytkin's grandmother and her son Vladislav became suspicious. Uncle Nikita came to visit them to talk, but his nephew wasn't home, so he took the video camera and left. After seeing the footage of the hammer killers desecrating the body of the homeless woman Alevtina Kudina, Vladislav immediately went to the police, and an hour and a half later, Nikita and Artyom were detained. Lytkin reacted calmly to the arrest and surrendered. Anufriev even beamed. Finally, everyone will know about us. By midnight, both of them had confessed. Anufriev, while signing the protocol, imitated Pechushkin and told the investigator, as one hero said, "Give me a glass of whiskey and a cigar, and you'll learn so many new things about life that your hair will stand on end." In reality, both maniacs often changed their testimonies. At times they took all the blame upon themselves, then they accused each other, but eventually they calmed down and chose specific strategies. According to Anufriev, the idea to take someone's life belonged to Lytkin.
I'm not a maniac. Maniacs are those guys, the ones standing behind the wall, the ones who cut off ears. Nikita, yes.
The guy also said that he didn't feel the relief he was hoping for, and he committed the crime because he gave in to his friend's whims and spent too much time on the wrong parts of the internet. Trying to shift the blame onto his friend, Artyom didn't shy away from anything. "I'll be straight, he's a leader. He didn't influence, but he was an instigator of the crimes." Nikita Lytkin said that he wouldn't have committed the crime alone because it's not interesting by yourself. "Artyom and I did it. I liked it."
We were sitting at my place. Then we went and bought knives. Well, specifically for this.
In an interview, Lytkin stated that he would have continued his criminal activity if he had remained free, and he did not retract his words. The investigation, however, thought otherwise. In reality, Artyom Anufriev was the unofficial leader. The guys really needed each other and would not have started committing these terrible crimes alone. But the mastermind was Anufriev, and the perpetrator was Lytkin, since it was established that all the stab wounds were inflicted by Nikita. And Anufriev continued to say in all interviews that Lytkin was the instigator and the leader. After the verdict was delivered against the hammer killers, the investigator stated these teenagers became fixated on each other because they were a perfect match. Anufriev was a leader who wanted to be understood from a single glance. Lytkin was the follower who dreamed of approval and recognition. During searches of Artyom and Nikita, a mallet, 4 teeth, hats with slits, an airgun, folding knives, disturbing videos, flash drives, notebooks, and notepads with extremist materials were found. Anufriev's mother defended her son until the very end, and even destroyed one of the documents that could have clearly compromised the boy. Moreover, she did this in the presence of investigators and operatives. The court ordered the hammer attackers held in pretrial detention for 2 months. Subsequently, the terms were extended very often due to medical, psychological, and forensic examinations. On October 13, 2013, when the terms expired once again, Anufriev's lawyers filed a motion requesting the court to change the preventive measure to a written pledge not to leave the city. Anufriev himself stated that he no longer posed a danger to society. Of course, the court did not agree with the defense's arguments. The court session began with the reading of the indictment, which the prosecutor read out for more than an hour. Separately, Artyom Anufriev was charged with 14 counts of involving a minor in criminal activity, since Lytkin was 17 at the time of almost all the crimes. Lytkin denied only the charge of extremism, while Anufriev refused to admit guilt for almost everything. The forensic psychiatric examination found the hammermen sane, but in the detention center, Anufriev was registered as a person prone to self-harm and suicide, and psychologists worked with him separately. During the crime scene reenactment, each suspect was accompanied by 20 officers to prevent vigilante justice and lynching by local residents and the victims' families. The trial was very difficult psychologically. Some victims and witnesses refused to testify. Some did so because of the widespread publicity, while others simply didn't want to remember those terrible events. During the trial, several times the court had to take a break because one of the witnesses fainted. Anufriev behaved very cynically at first during the trial, but later he got tired of playing the role of a cold-blooded maniac and cried twice, after which he started getting confused in all his testimonies, and he tried to blame all the murders on Lytkin. He said that in fact he didn't harm anyone, that it was Lytkin who did, and he was just present and watching. And in the end, he stated, "I am involved in the Pirog case and in the Wedinoy case." Nikita Lytkin, on the other hand, looked very detached throughout the entire trial. Once, after giving testimony for 4 hours, the guy had a severe headache and the questioning was postponed to another day. For some reason, at first, Artyom Anufriev was sure that he would be released and there would be no charges. Nikita Lytkin, on the other hand, accepted his fate. On October 16, 2012, Artyom cut the side of his neck and scratched his stomach with a razor blade in court, which he had smuggled in his sock. He was never able to explain why he did it, but his lawyer considered it to be the result of an emotional outburst. It was probably triggered by the fact that Anufriev's mother attended the court session for the first time. And before we move on to the verdicts, let's try to figure out what kind of people Lytkin and Anufriev were, or rather, Anufriev and Lytkin. Nikita Lytkin is a mentally unstable young man with a passive and easily influenced personality, prone to dependence on a stronger, dominant friend. In childhood, he was calm and obedient, but from adolescence, he began to show signs of withdrawal, social isolation, and behavioral problems. His development took place against a background of neglect from his family, the absence of a father figure, and his mother's emotional instability. Rejected by every peer group, he became antisocial and vulnerable, carrying a deep sense of inferiority. Lytkin envied more successful peers and harbored latent aggression, which he later began to express through minor offenses and then as part of a bloody alliance with Anufriev. Despite the fact that he was the one who inflicted most of the stab wounds, psychologically he remained a follower in need of approval. His final letter in court, which we will get to later, demonstrates remorse and weakness rather than true reflection, while his eventual fate, which we will discuss later, confirms his chronic sense of helplessness, loneliness, and mental instability. Artem Anufriev is a narcissistic, intellectually developed but deeply frustrated young man with pronounced psychopathic traits, pathological egocentrism, and sadistic fantasies. From an early age, he showed signs of arrogance, intellectual elitism, did not recognize authority, and was unable to build constructive relationships either with his peers or with his mother. Upbringing in conditions of overprotection and total control led to the formation of a hostile personality, striving for dominance and self-expression through destruction. Artem constantly sought recognition, respect and power, but was unable to achieve them in a socially acceptable way. Failed attempts to define himself through school, creativity and ideology, rejection by skinheads and neo-Nazis, and failure in his band led him to choose the most radical form of self-assertion, serial violence. In tandem with Lytkin, he acted as the ideological leader, manipulator and director. Even after his arrest and in court, Anufriev continued to play a role, maneuvering between pleading guilty and lengthy attempts at self-justification, with a clear interest in his own notoriety and image as someone special. His behavior is characterized by shallow affect, low empathy, a sadistic imagination, a desire for symbolic power, and a thirst for attention. Psychologically, he is a classic dark triad personality with traits of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Check out his full interview for yourself. I'll share it on Telegram and the link will be in the description. You'll be shocked at just how slippery and unpleasant this guy is. He gives off absolutely no good vibes. It's definitely an interview worth watching if you're interested. I highly recommend it. He's just a really slippery guy. The prosecutor asked the court to sentence Artyom Anufriev to life in prison and Lytkin to 25 years. Lytkin accepted the sentence. He even made a letter expressing remorse public in court. I've spent a year and a half in the detention center, going through a lot and reflecting on many things. I thought about my life, remembered my childhood, my mother, my childhood friends, and realized that a long time ago, in my childhood, I was actually happy. Then, in 6th grade, I met Artyom and transferred to another class. That was the beginning of my downfall. In the new class, I didn't have any friends. My childhood friends had all moved away, and my new classmates didn't accept me. They humiliated me. I didn't want anything anymore. I didn't want to study or go to practice, and honestly, I didn't even want to live. I couldn't tell my mom. I thought it was shameful, and besides, she'd probably go to the school to sort things out. I became angry at everyone, lost faith in myself, in people, and in justice. I only shared it with Artyom. He supported me in everything. He was also having some problems at home with his mom and at school. Now I look back at everything and think, I was a fool. I should have lived differently, not paid attention to the mockery and humiliation, and proved in another way that I'm not a loser and that I'm worth something. I should have focused on my studies, gone back to wrestling practice. Now I understand that by taking the lives of weak and defenseless people, I only showed my own weakness and proved nothing to anyone. I have wronged people and I am ready to accept my punishment. I feel bad when I think about what I have done. Sometimes I see myself as if from the outside and can't believe that it was me. If I could change everything and start my life over, I would never commit those crimes again. Lytkin, November 2012. By the way, it feels like a pretty sincere letter. What do you think? Write your comments. It will be interesting to read them. The defendant's final statement was scheduled for March 12, 2013, but it was cancelled because, according to them, neither of them was ready. Then it was postponed to the next day, but even then they were not ready, and in the end it only took place on March 18th. Lytkin, when given the chance for a final statement, refused. Anufriev, without pausing, read out a prepared statement in which he once again apologized to the victims and once again denied the charges brought against him. Thanks to the media, I now have a stain on my reputation that I can't wash away. My grandfather is a veteran of the Great Patriotic War, and I'm being called a fascist, the very thing he protected us from. The case materials do not prove my guilt. I only admit guilt in the death of Olga Pirog, as well as in desecrating the corpse, but only in the sense that I filmed it on camera. I did not participate in any of the other crimes. As foolish as it may sound, I myself do not understand why I did it. I don't know what came over me. I sincerely offer my condolences. I believe that there are no people our age who cannot be reformed. Anyone can be reformed at any age. You just have to want it. I have that desire.
So what's there to hide anymore? It's all clear already. If there are such videos on the computer, who else could have done all this?
On April 2, 2013, the Irkutsk Regional Court sentenced Anufriev to life imprisonment and Lytkin to 24 years. The sentence was read out for a long time, and all the while Anufriev stared indifferently at the floor. Lytkin was visibly nervous, but he did not lower his eyes. He remained in that state even when his prison term was announced. Anufriev, by contrast, upon hearing the judge's verdict, collapsed onto the bench and burst into tears. After the sentence was announced, he shouted to the victims, "Well, are you satisfied?" In response, Danil Semyonov's mother, Svetlana, shouted back at him, "Were you satisfied when you tortured my son?" A 12-year-old child is lying in the ground. Lytkin did not react to the sentence in any way and did not look at Artyom. The sentence drew sharp criticism from the victims, who believed that Lytkin deserved a similar life sentence. Meanwhile, one of the surviving victims, Nina Kuzmina, considered the sentence against Lytkin to be unfair, even though he was the one who attacked her. After the verdict was announced for the hammer attackers, Nina Kuzmina spoke about her attacker. Nikita just had bad luck with his friend. He had been an outcast since 5th grade, he wasn't accepted, and because of his character he couldn't handle it. Life was hard for him. And then his only friend appeared. He wanted to prove himself. Judging by the way Anufriev behaved during all the hearings, he is quite deceitful, very cunning, and arrogant. Nikita just happened to be there. That doesn't justify Nikita at all, but that's exactly what I told him during the closing arguments. Nikita, you were unlucky. Later, Lytkin's sentence was reduced from 24 to 20 years, since his minor status was taken into account at the time of most of the killings, and the sentence of 5 years in prison was found to be unfounded. The sentence against Anufriev was left unchanged. During its announcement, the Irkutsk Regional Court ruled that the total amount of compensation to be paid by the criminals is 2,750,000 rubles. The prosecutor stated that the hammer killers would have to pay the compensation from the money they earn in prison, so they are unlikely to ever be able to pay it off. The hammer killers never crossed paths again. In August 2016, the court overturned Lytkin's prison sentence and sent him for compulsory treatment. But on the day he was supposed to go to the hospital, he attacked his cellmate and hit him on the head with a scoop 8 times. Nikita hoped that he would be given a life sentence and sent to Vologda Piatak, where Anufriev is imprisoned, but instead he was transferred to the Angarsk colony, where he took his own life. Nikita Lytkin was found in serious condition. On the morning of November 28, 2021, the duty paramedic gave him first aid. The convict was urgently hospitalized in the city hospital, where he died on November 30, 2021. At that time, he was 29 years old. Artem Anufriev is currently serving a life sentence. And what do you think about this case? Write in the comments. Leave likes or dislikes. I'll leave additional materials in the Telegram channel Strashno Strashnoti. Subscribe and watch other videos on the channel. They come out even if you don't always get notifications about them.